So today I want to talk about a subject that I believe it's not just for moms, it pertains to all of us, mothers, fathers, older adults, younger adults, students, and children, and that is on the subject of growth. A couple years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I had taken Jude into the doctor for his annual, checkup. And the doctor was talking about how much he had grown that year. I think he had grown a couple of inches, and so the doctor was mentioning that. So we got into the car, and we were leaving, and Jude kind of was looking, and he started kind of looking at his hands, and he was looking at his arms, and he was like, "Mom, if I'm growing, why can't I see it?" And I had to explain to him, when we grow so slowly that most of the time we can't see it. Now, sometimes we'll go through like a growth spurt, like Oakley just went through this year, and you could feel like you almost could see him growing. I think he grew 4 inches just this school year. He's now the same height as my husband, and a couple years ago, we went through that with our son, Charlie. He's now 6'3". So there are times that we go through growth spurts, but we still can't see when we're growing. And a lot of times, the same way in life, spiritually, emotionally, maybe in our education, our careers, all sorts of areas of our lives, we're growing, but we're growing slowly, and we can't see it, and it can be frustrated. We're all on a journey to become all that God has created us to be. And sometimes we can't see it. It's slow, and we wonder if anything is happening. So today I wanted to talk about the stages of growth that we all go through. I believe we repeat these over and over and over again in our lives because we're alive. Everybody who's sitting here today, we're alive, right? So we're growing and changing. The only things that don't grow and change are things that are dead. So if you're here, you're growing. So the first stage of growth that we all go through is the seed stage. And this is a stage where it's a time when the plant is small, it's undeveloped, it's dormant, and there seems to be no change and no growth. But this is actually a stage of growth. You might look at this and say, well, that's just a seed. That's nothing. You're not growing. But this seed is potential. There are capabilities in here. There's potential in here. So what does this look like for us? This might be a season where we feel like nothing's happening. We might wonder, does God have a plan for me? How do I even figure that out? Maybe you have a dream, but it's in a dormant season and nothing's happening. Maybe things just feel stagnant. A lot of times when we're in this season, it seems like, I don't know if this happens to you, but it happens to me. Whenever we're in this season of just stagnancy, it seems like everybody else is getting the thing that you are praying for and you're working toward. You want to get married, and all of a sudden 5 of your friends get engaged. You want to have a baby, and it seems like everybody and their sister is pregnant. Maybe you're waiting, for that breakthrough in your career, and all of your colleagues and coworkers are getting promotions. This season can feel very frustrating. That's what the seed stage feels like. So during this season, there are 2 things that we want to be cautious of. And the first thing is we want to be careful that we don't start doubting that God has a plan. We don't want to doubt that he's forgotten us. We don't want to doubt that he has a plan. We don't want to stop hoping for better things. We don't want to just settle or just think, oh, well, this is all there is, so I'm just going to give up. Paul uses the analogy of a seed in 1 Corinthians 15, and he says, maybe we can read this together. If we don't read it out loud, we're going to get in trouble, so we better read it out loud together. It says this in 1 Corinthians 15, when you sow a seed in the ground, it does not sprout to life unless it dies. And what you sow is a bare seed, not the full-bodied plant that will later grow up. This seed stage is not a stage where we're going to stay. God has a plan. There's more coming. There's future. Like I said, this seed is potential in our lives. I was talking to my daughter. She gave me permission to tell this story several months ago. She's in her 3rd year of college, and she said, Mom, sometimes I just feel like everybody else's life is moving forward, and I'm just here in college, going to class, week after week, month after month, year after year, and I'm just waiting for something to happen in my life. What's my career going to be? What's my purpose? Am I ever going to get a job? Am I going to have a family? Am I going to have a home? And this doesn't just happen to college students. We can all find ourselves in this stage, this seed stage where things can feel extremely unproductive. So we want to be careful to not doubt during this season. And the second thing we want to be careful of is slipping into a negative or scarcity mindset. Now, I'm up here just talking to myself right here. Like this, I can fall into this mindset so easily during this stage. We can feel passed up, set aside, or like if something good is happening to other people, that there's not enough to go around for us. Maybe you might say, well, their son made it on the soccer team, so there's not going to be a spot for my son now. Or her daughter got that scholarship, so now what's going to happen with my daughter? Maybe it's their social media post got shared by this influencer, and now all these opportunities are going to come to them, and I'm not going to have an opportunity. Maybe you say, oh, well, they were voted in the best of Loudon, and so they're going to have all the success in their business, but my business isn't going to have success. We can relate to different types, this thinking in different areas of our life. But I'm here to tell you today, other people's success does not hinder, or it is not a threat to your success. I believe in God's plan. It can be a part of it. I love the story I heard years ago. There was a pastor in Southern California. You may have heard of him, Pastor Jack Hayford. And he tells the story of when he was, his church was just starting. His ministry was just starting, and they were young and small and just getting off the ground. And he tells a story of how every day he used to drive by this other church. It was the First Baptist Church there in Van Nuys, California. And so he said he would drive by, and they had this beautiful, pristine property, prime location, right on Route 7. Big, beautiful building. And so he used to drive by every day, and he would see the impact they were making in the community and all that they were doing. And he started dealing with this scarcity mindset. Well, Lord, you're blessing them. There's not going to be anything for my church. There's not going to be anything for us. And so one day he was driving by, and he felt like God just kind of nudged him and said, you know what? I want you to pray for that church. So he started praying every day when he would drive by. He started praying for that church that God would bless them and cause them to make a greater impact and to succeed. And you know what happened? God answered his prayer. That church started growing and succeeding and making more of an impact, so much so that they had an opportunity to get another property on the other side of town. And so they moved into a new building on the other side of town. And guess who bought the land and the building that he had been praying and wanting? Pastor Jack Hayford. His church ended up being able to move into that property. So we need to recognize that sometimes other people's success, our success, is linked to other people's. So what do we do during this season? Maybe you say, I think I'm in that seed season. I'm in a dormant season where it feels like there's no motion. What do we do during this season? Don't uproot. Stay planted. Psalm 92 says, those who are planted, can we read it together? Those who are planted in the house of the Lord shall flourish. Fresh and flourishing. It's so tempting when we're discouraged, when we don't see movement, to just give in and say, you know what? This must not be from God. Maybe this soil where I'm planted isn't from God. Maybe this marriage that I'm in isn't working. This job isn't working. This relationship isn't working. Maybe this church isn't working. This dream isn't working. And so the temptation is there to uproot and pull that seed out and try to put it someplace else. But what we don't realize is that seed was planting, and underneath the surface where we can't see, there were roots taking root. There was growth going on, and when we pluck that out, we are uprooting our growth. Paul encourages us in Galatians to not give up. I want to say this real quick before we get to this. This stage is a test of our patience. And this is an opportunity to pass the test of patience. So Paul says in Galatians, I don't think it's up on the screen, but chapter 6, verse 9, he says, don't become weary in doing good. For at the proper time, and that's important, the proper time, we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. So, this has happened in my life. We can see it many times in our parenting life, right? My son Charlie, I'm going to pick on him a little bit here because now he's older. But when he was a toddler, he was terrible. I'm just going to be honest. He was when they talk about the terrible twos, he had like the terrible 2s, 3s, and 4s. He was the most stubborn, strong-willed child. And I can remember it being like a daily battle with him of like the battle of the wills. And it was exhausting. There were times, just whatever I wanted him to do, it was like he was just going to do the opposite every day. And so there were times where I was like, he's going to still just be throwing temper tantrums when he's 30. That's just the way it's going to be. I don't know what to do. But there were days where I was like, I'm just tired of this. I can't keep battling against him. Just forget it. You just want to give in and let him do whatever he wants to do. Fine. You want all the candy in the Wegmans checkout line? Take it. Just take all the candy because I can't keep fighting with you, right? We can relate. Well, I remember, though, knowing and understanding at that time, it's like, no, I can't give in. You know what? God didn't give me my children to make them happy all the time. That's not my job as a parent. My job as a parent was to try to raise my kids to be responsible, God-fearing, honoring, respectful people. And so I had to day after day remind myself, don't give in. Keep going, keep believing. He's trying to go this way. It's, we got to course correct this way. Here he goes. We got to course correct this way. Day after day after day. And I remember a few years later, he had gone over to a friend's house for a play date or something like that. And the mom afterward, when I saw her, she pulled me aside and she was like, wow. She was like, your son, Charlie, he was so good. He said please and thank you, and he listened so well, and he cleaned up after himself. And I was like standing there with like my jaw on the floor. I'm like, my son? There's no way you are talking about my son. But now, of course, when you meet him, he's obviously not still throwing temper tantrums. He's a great, sweet, kind-hearted young man. So I promise you, we don't stay in that seed stage forever. So the next stage that we move from, when we move out of the seed stage, is we move into the sapling stage. This is a young plant stage. Now this stage is a time when the plant breaks through the soil and there's growth and change apparent. So what does this look like for us? This stage is a stage that's kind of exciting. We're starting to see growth. We're starting to see some of our hard work pay off. We're maybe seeing a glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel. Dreams are starting to come to pass. Maybe, we're having some breakthrough in that business we've been planting and sowing into. We're seeing movement and progress. Maybe you started a blog. You want to be a writer, so you start a blog and it's getting traction. Maybe spiritually you've taken foundations and you've finished that class and you've joined a connect group or a serve team. Maybe you've started that career or family, or you've gotten married. This is an exciting time. So what do we do during this stage? During this stage, we stay humble. And wow, I got some amens. I think the first service was like, what? That is not what I wanted to hear. We stay humble. A sapling, a small plant, can withstand small storms. But if big storms come, they need the protection of more mature plants. In nature, we very rarely see trees or plants in nature on their own. They grow in clusters and groups and forests. And expert foresters will tell you that plants in close proximity do better in stressful conditions. They survive cold, drought, heat, and storms better than those planted individually. So our insight there is when we are in the sapling stage, we need the protection and nutrients of others. You know, when I first began following the Lord, I was young, and I had taken our foundations class, which at that time was a 9-month course. I had finished that, and I was in connect groups. I was involved really heavily in the youth group. I was learning and growing, and like a lot of young people, I think I probably thought I knew everything, right? I mean, we think we've got it all figured out. But I was dating a guy who wasn't good for me, and I needed other people. I'm so thankful that I had people in my life that could come alongside me and point that out. I'm thankful for my youth pastor's wife, Joy Chadwick, who pulled me aside one day and she said, you know, Charlie's single. I'm thankful, like people like Karen Coker, she and Pastor Whalen, pastors here in our church. I worked with her at the time, and she kind of pulled me aside and she said, I don't think that relationship that you're in is good for you. I don't think that's right for you. And you're getting to an age where you're going to be engaged or getting married, and you need to look at that more closely. You know why? Because those were people that had lived life more than I had. They had been through some things. If we look at nature, I was down here, low. They were more mature. They had a different perspective. They could see further than what I could see at that time in my life. And I was not humble in a lot of things, but I'm so thankful that I was able to be humble in that and to listen. And here 25 years later, here we are with 4 kids. Who would have known? At this stage, we still have a lot of learning and growing to do. So a practical step, you say, okay, that's great. I want that. I'm in that stage. I need that. What do we do? How do I find that? So just a practical step that we can do is to search out and sign up for a connect group. You're in a great place to find those kind of relationships. And one of the first wonderful step to find a connect group is honestly just to join our foundations class. Many of you know we just finished our spring semester. Summer's going to fly by. So this fall, sign up and if you haven't taken that foundations class, get in it or get in foundations too, because you get to, not only are you in a class and you're learning, but you're getting to be surrounded in a small group setting with other people and develop relationships and grow together. This is just a special invitation, a special Mother's Day drop for you guys, or for you ladies, I should say. Next Saturday, we're having a women's brunch. We're going to be in this room next Saturday. We have some special plans. We are making plans for this summer, and we want all the women to be involved in it. And so we're going to be talking about that next Saturday, 9:30 in the morning for a brunch. You can get more information, sign up on our app, stop by the orange tables after service to find out more about that. But we would love to have you there and be involved this summer in what we're doing. So Jesus also talks about this step. He warns about when we're in this stage of growth. And you might be saying, wow, like the Bible talks a lot about like seeds and trees and growth. And I hope we understand that it's not talking about actual seeds. It's talking about us. It's talking about people. So when we see that, we need to put ourselves in that scenario. So in Matthew 13:5-7, he says, some seeds, this is Jesus talking, some seeds fell on shallow soil with underlying rock. The seeds sprouted quickly because the soil was shallow, but the plants soon wilted under the hot sun. And since they didn't have deep roots, they died. Other seeds fell among thorns that grew up and choked out the tender plants. So if we look at that in verse 7, he's warning us to be careful who we're listening to. What are we leaning toward? You know, I don't know if you're like this, ladies, but when I get into it, if my husband and I get in an argument, and we've been married 25 years, so let's be real, we've had arguments. I don't know about your marriages, but we have arguments. If I get into an argument with my husband, I know that there are 2 different types of people I can call. I can call a friend who I can, complain to and start venting to, and she might just validate my feelings, and then the male husband bashing can begin, right? But then I have another choice. I have a friend that I can call who's going to listen and encourage me and say, you're crazy, like you got a great husband, Sounds like maybe you had a part to play in this, and call me out on my nonsense. Who are we listening to? We see a warning to this in Psalm 1. It says, happy are those who don't listen to the wicked, who don't go where sinners go, who don't do what evil people do. They love the Lord's teachings, and they think about those teachings day and night. They are strong and flourish like a tree planted by a river. The tree produces fruit in season, and its leaves don't die. Everything they do will succeed. So we want to stay humble at this stage. Surround ourselves by people who don't, let us be people. Surround ourselves with people who are going to encourage us. Encourage us in the teachings of the Lord so that we can flourish and be like that tree planted by a river. So in this stage, we're going to stay humble. The next stage, the third stage in our growth is the mature plant. And I had to use it. It's kind of in the back, but Virginia Academy had a play a couple weeks ago, and they had this amazing tree. And it is so cool. Like, I wish you could see it up close. I know it's kind of back here. But we want to a third stage of growth is when we reach that mature tree stage. Let me get back to my notes here. So this mature plant stage is a stage when the plant is producing seeds and fruit. It has survived seasons of drought, storm, growing pains, and it's still thriving. So what does this stage look like for us? This is a stage where these are usually older and more mature men and women, and they've been through some stuff. They've been through real challenges, but they're still centered and living in their sweet spot, right? They're still living in hope. They've experienced life, all the heartaches, disappointments, joys, successes, the highs and lows, and life has not made them bitter, but they're still growing and planted and thriving. So maybe this is you. Maybe you're in a season where you're like, you know what, I'm in a marriage that has stood the test of time. Maybe you've had kids that they're grown and you've launched out into the world. Maybe you've weathered the ups and downs of a career. Maybe you've come through the pain of losing a loved one and you know what grief feels like, but you're still planted and you're still in faith. If you think that you are in this stage, please, please, please know that you are so needed. We need you more than ever. This is not the time to tap out. This is not the time to sit down. This is not the time to opt out. Your destiny is not complete. There are others who need us, and this is a beautiful picture of the church. I'm so thankful to be a part of a generational church where we have people in all stages and ages of life, all stages of growth, that we can be around each other and know each other. I just think about the elders, some of our elders that we have in our church. I think about the Carlisles who have been in our church for 40 years, and they stand up here. I'm so blessed to see them stand up here every Sunday morning as a part of our prayer team, praying for people. And I know that their prayers that they're praying are being answered. And they're ministering to people, and they're instilling faith into other people. And I just love that picture. I'm so thankful for Sister Nancy Huff, who's also been in our church for over 40 years. You know, she leads a high school girls connect group. I mean, how amazing is that? You know why? Because she wants to reproduce. She's wanting to be a mature. She's wanting to pour into others. I'm so thankful for my mother-in-law, the founding pastors of our church. I heard that she does a ton of things. She leads connect groups. She's always pouring into others. But one thing I thought was so special, several months ago, she invited this family that has 8 or 9 kids, over to her house. She is like the master entertainer, right? She's a phenomenal cook. She loves to set a beautiful table. She loves to host people in her home. So she had this idea, and she had this family come over, and these children all cooked and prepared a meal together and learned how to be hospitable. They went through a recipe and they all made all of the ingredients to the recipe and they set the table and they had the meal. They probably learned like what fork to use and what spoon to use. I'm still not even always completely sure of that. But what is she doing? She's pouring into others. So that's what we do during this stage is we reproduce, we pour into others. How do we do this? We lead a connect group. We teach a class. We mentor those who are younger than us. You know, something we can do is invite people into our homes for a dinner or for a meal and share a meal together. One thing that I've started doing recently in this past year is I've just started inviting some women to coffee. And I just go to coffee with them and I say, tell me about yourself. Tell me where you are. Tell me what you need. How can I help you? Is there anything that you need from me? And you know what? I think every single time someone has needed something. And I never would have been able to discover that on my own unless I did that. God will use us to help others if we let him. Let's read what Paul says here as he's closing out his words to the Corinthian church in 1 Corinthians. He says, so my dear brothers and sisters, stand strong. Do not let anyone move you. Always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your work in the Lord is never wasted. It's never wasted. Doing something for others in the name of the Lord is never wasted. It will bear fruit. It will have a harvest. So today, as we close, you might be in the seed stage. Let's stay planted. Or maybe you find yourself in a sapling stage. Let's stay humble. And please, if you find yourself in that mature stage, pour into others. Don't opt out. Amen. Amen. Can we close in prayer? Lord, I thank you for today. I thank you for your word. I thank you that we can learn and be encouraged, oh God. I pray for all of those here today, Lord. Maybe they're in that seed stage, God. I pray that you would give them patience, Lord. Grant them patience. Let them not be discouraged, God. Help them to stay planted, oh God, and full of faith and hope. Lord, for those that maybe are in that young plant stage, God, I pray, Lord, that you would just help them to stay humble. Help them to find people, Lord, to surround themselves with, Lord, that they can learn from and grow with, Lord, and have protection, Lord, under. And God, I pray for all of those, Lord. We're so blessed for so many, God, that are maybe in that mature stage of growth, Lord. I thank you for them, Lord. I pray, God, that you would encourage them, help them, Lord, to find ways to pour into others and to reproduce themselves, Lord. I just pray for everyone in this room, Lord. I pray that you would just bless them today, God. In Jesus' name, amen.